Welcome to The Blue Dot, Northern Kentucky's premier political podcast, brought to you by the Kenton County Democratic Executive Committee. Welcome back to The Blue Dot podcast, where we talk about the kitchen table topics that matter most to those in our community. And today we'll be taking a closer look at the state of education right here in Northern Kentucky. Thanks so much for joining. I'm Natalie MacDonald.
And I'm Danielle Bell, filling in for Brian. Today we're joined by veteran educator and union leader Kelly Reed. Kelly taught English at Boone County High School for 21 years and currently serves as president of the Boone County Education Association. Kelly, thank you so much for being here. We're really glad to have you on the show.
Very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks so much. And in addition to all the work in Boone County that you've done, you also contribute to statewide conversations on public education and policy through opinion writing and public advocacy. But let me hand it over to you. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about who you are and how you got to doing what you're doing now?
Sure. So I grew up in Covington, lived for 60 plus years in the same house where my great-grandparents were, my grandparents, my parents, and grew up in a very diverse community in Covington in the late 60s and early 70s. And really, that set the tone for my entire life. Met lots of great people there, worked with lots of great people, spent 20 plus years working in a small hardware store in Covington, and transitioned into education and found a footing there.
Listeners who may not be familiar with the Boone County Education Association, can you tell us what the BCA actually does day to day and why teacher unions matter so much in shaping strong public schools?
Sure. So we are the third largest union in Kentucky, the third largest local in Kentucky behind both Jefferson and Fayette County. And we are the second largest union with a collective bargaining agreement, a contract. And so what our job is, or what my job is to protect teachers' rights. And sometimes people hear something about a contract and how much it is negative to the employer. And that's not really how we like to look at it. We think of a contract as the confines of working conditions. And so it tells both the employer and the employee what can and should happen in day-to-day work. So it sets our day. So for a high school teacher like I am, it would be 7:35 to 2:45, a few minutes before students get there, a few minutes after students get there. Not that anyone necessarily works those hours. I used to get to work by 6:30 and leave around 4. So it sets those parameters of what has to be done, what can be done, in the way that it should be. Beyond that, since we are one of the largest in the state, BCA spends a lot of time in Frankfort talking with legislators to work on policy that will directly affect our students, to make sure that the students are getting the best education that they can get day in and day out. Not just in Boone County, although that's our focus, but throughout the state.
Well, that kind of leads to this another question that I wanted to ask you. Does Kenton County have an education association and Campbell County as well? And do you all work together?
So yes, we do. So if you want to think about our national umbrella is the National Education Association. Below that is the Kentucky Education Association. Below that is the Northern Kentucky Education Association. And then within the Northern Kentucky Education Association would be the various locals, whether it's Boone County, Campbell County, Covington, Southgate, Bellevue, the myriad of locals that we have here. One of the great things about Northern Kentucky, though, is that we have 3 of the contracts in the state, and there are very few locals that have contracts. That's something we're hoping to expand, but Kenton, Boone, and Newport have a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement.
Oh. And you have a lot going on right now in education for sure. So I'm sure you're I'm sure you're really busy, specifically navigating a lot of the issues that we've been hearing from at least friends of mine who are in teaching about staffing challenges, workload, compensation and benefits, legislation that's ongoing right now. What are the most pressing issues that you think are facing the educators in the schools today?
So the most pressing issue right now is HB 500, which is the House budget bill. As a matter of fact, as soon as we're finished with this, I'm hopping on a call with Protect Our Schools KY to discuss how to push back against that. One of the problems with having basically a unicameral legislative body, all Republicans, is that the conversations tend to stop at the point when the pen hits the paper for writing legislation. That oftentimes there are legislators who won't bring in the experts, whatever that happens to be. I don't know anything about fire. I don't know anything about policing. I will stay in my lane, but I know a lot about education. I work in schools with this job. I work in middle, high school, and elementary schools, so I see what's going on day to day. But if someone were to ask me how to teach an elementary math class, I would tell them I don't know. But I have a friend who does. Let's talk to him or let's talk to her and see what needs to be done. Which is something that we did with. I'm going to probably get this wrong, but I believe it was HB 162. James Tipton said, "Hey, we have this math program that we want to institute. Can we get some educators in the room?" And we were fortunate that Boone County had what I'm going to say 3 educators in the room. There's a friend of mine who taught across the hall from me. She is now down in Fayette County, but she was one of the people brought to the table to help hammer that out so that it's best for the educators, that it takes something off their plate, and in turn is best for the students because they're getting the education they need from people who are not hammering down nails left and right, so that they can actually teach.
Kind of continuing on that topic, as you brought up the Republican budget. So we are a little past the halfway point of the 2026 legislative session, and
Right.
there has been a lot moving that could
Awesome.
impact public education for sure. The KY GOP House budget proposal in particular would cut transportation funding by 129 million a year, freeze the SEEK base, and reduce higher ed funding by 339 million. What would those budget cuts look like for public schools in Boone, Kenton, and Campbell County?
So it would be devastating. I don't know how else to put that. It would be devastating from the standpoint of potentially breaking the system. And in that, because and I'm just looking at insurance costs, the insurance cost would be so grave to new teachers, to veteran teachers, that it would drive people out of teaching, plain and simple. And when you don't have veteran teachers, then you lose that experience. When you don't have new teachers, you lose that vibrance. And what happens next? You lose a wealth of knowledge.
And could you speak a little bit more about there was a report in the Herald Leader over the weekend that raised concerns about the proposed 5% cap on employer contributions to the Kentucky Employee Health Plan that could impact state worker benefits. And I know you kind of touched on that.
Sure.
Can you talk about that a little bit
Sure.
more?
So what that would do, and I'm an English teacher. I'm not really good with numbers. Actually, I'm horrible with numbers. But what that would do, it would almost double the insurance costs for teachers, potentially tripling the insurance costs for our classified staff, our bus drivers, our custodians, our food service workers, our paraeducators. And when I talk about educators, I'm including everyone. We can't teach students who are not fed. We can't teach students who can't get to school. We have to think about that as a holistic approach as opposed to the teacher and that's all we need. We need more than just teachers.
I just want to stick on the legislative session for another question. So, beyond the proposed GOP budget bills, there have been a lot of things introduced on everything from pre K, teacher pay, enrollment, curriculum, and oversight. What bills are you tracking that will do the most good for students and educators, and which ones are you most concerned about?
So the ones that I think will be the biggest benefit, anything that has to do with early childhood education. And we go back and forth every year, every 2 years or so about fully funding kindergarten. If we could fully fund kindergarten and we don't have to ever talk about that again, that would be great. Beyond that, if we could actually get in a pre-K for all, the savings that we would have on that are immense. And I know that you had Lieutenant Governor Coleman on your show previously, and she talked about the savings that we see when we have pre-K, that it's something like $10 for every dollar that's spent. And we need to think about that in terms of not just how we hear that it's $1 and we get $10 back, but what that means. For every dollar that we spend, that is $10 that we don't have to spend later on materials, on remediation for reading. There are places where pre-K students go that is daycare, and there's places where pre-K students that go that's actually education. Kids coming to kindergarten who can read at a kindergarten level, kids who know their ABCs, kids who can count to 10 or beyond 10. That is great. But if we don't have that, then that's remediation that has to be done um, in kindergarten and then maybe further down the line. If we can get kids in and they're ready for kindergarten through pre-K, then they're on grade level by third grade. And I know that Lieutenant Governor Coleman also spoke about reading scores in, I think it was third grade, and how that looks when we're talking about prisons down the line. That's something we can eliminate just through a minor investment. When I say minor investment, I know that it's a lot of money, but when we're talking about it scalable down the line, we're talking about a minor investment.
It was so interesting talking to her about all of that and learning even just about the incarceration rates and how it can be tracked back to early childhood education. And it goes so much beyond just the cost. So not only are you saving money, but the benefits when it goes down to later education and post education, it all kind of combines that you're going to see the long-term benefit. And that just goes beyond the numbers. I don't understand why there is a pushback to it.
Monetization.
Yeah.
That's my take.
So give us a little peek behind the curtains when you're in Frankfurt and you're talking about education to some of these lawmakers. What do you hear? I'm just kind of curious about how that goes. Or do you literally just kind of go up there and say your piece, or is there any dialogue that goes into it?
So it depends on what the issue is and to whom I'm speaking. I have a lot of relationships with legislators from the area who they'll seek me out. They are very open to listening. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to change any opinions, but I can put some things out there and we can have open and frank discussions. When it's an issue like Amendment 2, the whatever voucher charter, tax bill, whatever they want to frame it from one year to the next, and it's coming back, I have to get up and say my piece. You know, I wish that there was not a voucher bill again this year. There is. I'm sure that we'll see a voucher bill again and again and again. Anywhere there are vouchers, I need to say this, anywhere there are vouchers, they have never been instituted by a popular vote. It has always been through the legislative process. And that tells you everything that you need to know about vouchers.
Yeah. And every time this pops up in Kentucky and it goes to the voters, overwhelmingly they're saying no to this, right? But they just keep trying.
Right. Yes. When we sat down to talk about this, I was hopeful that that Northern Kentucky would be, 49% for, against 51% for. I thought we would lose it by a little bit and the rest of the state would save us, but we were right in line with the rest of the state and we put a beating on that.
For sure. And then I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, about some of the issues that are coming up around anti-diversity policies and book restrictions, curriculum changes. I don't know if you can speak to that and how these impact what happens both in the classroom from a teacher's perspective and a student perspective, or has that hit yet?
So I haven't seen a lot about book bannings recently. A good friend of mine and I dealt with this when we were both teaching at Boone County High School. My friend Kim Shearer, she's now at Connor, and she said something, and I don't know that she's the author of this, but she said it again and again and again. If you ban a book, you ban a child. And that doesn't mean that everyone needs to read everything, but they need to have access to those books. When it comes to DEI, I am no longer saying DEI. I'm saying diversity, equity, inclusion, and you tell me which one of those terms you don't like. Do we need diversity? Absolutely. Do we need equity? We've needed it since the 1960s. We're moving in the right direction, but we're slipping backward. You tell me which one of those you don't like, and we'll have a conversation about that. It's not going to be a good conversation, but we'll have a conversation with that.
So I do have some listener questions that came in, if you're interested in taking some of those
Sure,
on,
for sure.
which was kind of
Sure.
fun. So thoughts on the cell phone use in schools and, should social media awareness be in focus more than just saying kids can't have their phones in school? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Sure. So there was an article I read. I don't remember where the article came from, but it was something that I read through NPR, and it talked about banning cell phones until kids are 16 years old. That horse is already out of the barn, and so you can't unring that bell, I suppose. I think that cell phones are a useful tool, but students need to learn how to use them. And I hope whoever listens to what I'm about to say next listens to the whole thing. When I was teaching research, I told my students, always go to Wikipedia first. Don't use Wikipedia, but always go to Wikipedia first, and then scroll down to the bottom and look at those pieces that they used for their research, and then look at that for your research. Don't use Wikipedia, but use those sources. And so if you know how to use something like Wikipedia or your cell phone in the proper way, then it is a tool of good use. But if you just quote Wikipedia, who knows who wrote anything. But if you go to the bottom, there are great sources at the bottom, and you can look at those firsthand sources and see what needs to be done. So I think of cell phones kind of the same way. It's a tool, but it's also a tool that can be misused if it's used incorrectly.
Kind of sounds like AI in schools, right?
Man, AI,
Was that a whole nother bag of tricks?
Whole other thing.
so I am, even though my hairline wouldn't show it, I'm a hippie from way back. I do not like AI. I think that it uses land and resources that shouldn't be used. And at the same time, AI is so new that it's just unreliable. I was working with someone a month ago or so who put some data into an AI engine, and what it spit back said, this is great, this is bad. And it was talking about the exact same thing. And so if it can't read that data well right now, it's the, again, it's a tool. It's in its infancy, and I don't know, it just uses up too much electricity and too much water. Not a fan. But that's the hippie talking.
But the teacher, I don't think it's going anywhere. Should we be teaching our kids how to use AI? I mean, going into college responsibly, is that something you see in the curriculum or will be seeing in the curriculum?
We will see that. Again, just like cell phones, it needs to be
Yeah.
responsible use. We need to know how to use it. We as teachers need to know how to use it. I have used it, not firsthand, but secondhand. I had someone who gave me a speech written in AI through AI. And so what I did is I went through and turned it into something that was useful to me. And so if we use it as a tool like that, it's just like grammar check back at the beginning of computers or the beginning of writing software. If you know grammar well enough, grammar check is great. But if you don't, grammar check it's writes business speech, not English teacher speech. So it's,
Correct.
you need to know the tool.
And then another question that came in was around parental support and getting parents more involved. Is there anything that both, I guess, the schools and I guess the parents, some of their responsibilities there, but how do we engage them more?
Sure. So obviously you cannot legislate parental support, but what you can do is to put some things in place that increases parental support. Increasing wages will help. So increasing the minimum wage helps. Fully funded kindergarten helps. Preschool helps. Those efforts to take some of the day-to-day worries off a parent and helping out with that will help parents to become more engaged. So a parent who doesn't have to worry about how I'm going to make rent or how I'm going to afford groceries, that will increase parental involvement because they don't have to worry about those things any longer. They can take a step back. Also, on educators, we need to meet parents where they are. And so we can't have meetings directly after school. And that's not something that we typically would do. But if we have like an open house at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, What are we doing about the parents who are in the midst of their shift right
Yeah.
then? What can we do about that? And in some cases, one of the great things we learned in the pandemic was how to do things remotely through Zoom or Teams, and we can meet parents and have parent conferences on those off hours when the parents are available and the teachers are as well.
That makes sense. It's just making it more available. It's,
Sure.
how do you fit everyone's needs though, right?
Right. Right.
And then one last question I had come in actually from an educator in Campbell County, and she was just worried or concerned about, of course, teacher pay, but also just teacher enrichment as a whole. And that goes beyond base pay. And I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Sure.
She felt like her position wasn't as respected as it used to be, if that makes sense.
Sure. So I was fortunate. I was part of a program through the State Department or side group from the State Department, and I got to teach overseas for a month. We had some teachers that we hosted here at Northern Kentucky University, and then we were able to go overseas. Teachers were respected like nobody's business overseas. I was in Bangladesh, and
Right.
people found out that I was a teacher. "Oh, you're a teacher. That's great." And that's not to say that teachers are not respected here, but we need to reframe that. And when I talk about this to people, I often say that teaching is a really easy job if you're looking at it just at that hour. And so we all remember our favorite teacher and how easy he or she made it look. And it is easy for 1 hour,
Yeah.
but they don't see all that prep that goes into it, the hours, the weekends, the years to refine that to make it look that easy. It's like looking at a magician, not to say that we're magicians, but it's like looking at a magician who, can make a dove appear or disappear. That takes years and years and years of practice, and we need to reframe our job as educators to the years and years and years of
Yeah.
practice. And before I went overseas, I was in DC with 20 other educators who were going all across the United States. And my friend Terry, who was also going to Bangladesh, said, "We need to stop talking about ourselves as I'm just a teacher. You're not just a teacher, you are a teacher. And we need to take that just out of there and reframe it as I am a teacher, a professional, and I should treat myself as a professional, but should also be treated as a professional."
Absolutely.
It's
100%.
so true. So true. Well, as you look to the future, in the next few years, let's say, what progress would make you feel like we're truly moving in the right direction for students and educators in Kentucky? And what policies or changes will be key to getting us there?
So, real pay. We have not had a raise. We have not had a mandated raise since 2008. So a real raise. With that, also that we're not looking for educators day in and day out every year, that we have educators who stay, that we have people who want to become educators, that we ourselves don't tell students, "Oh, you don't want to be an educator." It's tough now. I'm not going to say that it's not tough. It is tough. In the past 28 years, I've never thought about not being a teacher. It's a dream job. I love it. Some days are rough, especially now, and days that I'm spending in Frankfurt are really rough, but I have not regretted one day. I've never regretted my choice. It's a job that I love. We need people to become educators who love the job. And it's not for everybody. I'm not going to say that it's for everybody. I think of myself as an English teacher. There is no way I could be a math teacher. There's no way that I could be a PE teacher or a science teacher. There's no way that I could be an elementary or a middle school teacher. I am a high school teacher and I do it really well. I'm really good at it. I'm not good at other things. And I know that. And I think that's where we need to get back to. We need to get back to that.
Is there anything else that you want to touch on in this conversation that you think is critical for just all of us out here trying to follow the legislative session, trying to figure out what's going on in the landscape with education in Kentucky?
I'm going to say it again. Stop with the vouchers. I'm tired of it. I don't want to have to deal with it ever again. I know that I'm going to have to, but let's just put that aside. It's a winning argument for people who want to monetize education. It's a losing argument for our students. Plain and simple. The students who need the most will have the most taken from them. We need to stop that. We also need to respect our students and give them what they need, which is a quality education day in and day out across the Commonwealth, not just in certain areas, but across the Commonwealth. We need to do that because these are our future adults. These are our future workers. These are the people who will go in and pay our taxes. We need those people to be highly educated.
And I like how you kind of touched on a few positive things here and how you have a joy for teaching and how it is respected and how it is specialized. Just like a pediatrician is not a cardiologist, right? Math teacher
Sure,
is not the same as an English teacher. You have different specialties. So I think that's really interesting to think about and maybe not something that I thought about because I felt like going through school, maybe teachers did different things. You know what I mean? And they could be
sure,
bop, but I guess it makes sense that they really can't.
sure. My dad was a college professor for a while, and on Sundays I would go to brunch with my parents, and he would pass a paper across to me and say, "Hey, please grade this for me because I don't think I'm doing it right." I'm like, "Dad, you did a great job. I got the same grade you got." So, but that was, he knew where to go, I guess, to check himself.
That's awesome. Before we do let you go, we like to end on a high note, which I think we did there with, again, you talking about your joy of teaching. But we also like to do a little quick lightning round with all of our guests, if you're up for that.
I've been waiting for this. So I listened to your podcast on my way down and back from Frankfurt, and I think I'm caught up with all your episodes. I've been waiting for the lightning round.
Well, these aren't too bad. These are pretty benign. All right. And
Sure.
now that I know how you feel about AI and other things, I might know the answer to this. But a chalkboard or a smart board, which would you rather use?
So you might think that I would say chalkboard. I was probably the last person in our building to have a chalkboard, but I was also the first person to have a smart board. I really like it. I could sync my tablet to my smart board and I could walk around the room and type my
Oh.
notes and then work with students one on one. I also have horrible, horrible, horrible penmanship. So everything that I typed was clear as day. And if there was a student who missed a day, I could print up the notes and there they go.
And I don't have children. I don't have children in school, so I have to say that I had to Google what a smart board was.
When I adopted them, I thought that it was just another gimmick. I would hate it.
Yeah,
And I never looked back.
that's great.
I still like my chalkboard. It's old school. I like it, but yeah, smartboard was the way to
Yeah, got
go.
to dust out the chalk, on the erasers there.
Yeah, right, right, right.
Oh God, yeah, I remember that.
Alrighty, second question. What is your favorite book, fiction or nonfiction? I know that's
So
hard.
yeah, it's like asking which is your favorite child. So
Well, let's go
I
with
could
that
tell
first.
you.
No, I'm kidding.
No, no.
So I could when we moved into our house, I put a, built our bookcases, and my partner said, "You're not going to fill those with all your books." And I said, "Well, I can, but I'm not going to." My favorite book, though, actually, I'm going to give you two. One is what my computer is sitting on right now, which is the complete works of William
Oh.
Shakespeare. I'm a Shakespeare nerd, I guess. And I had always thought of him as inaccessible, but I look at him as having written stuff 400 years ago that's applicable today. When we think about Romeo and Juliet, it's just two high school kids that fall in love, and it's poorly, but it's immature love. My favorite book though is If on a Winter's Night a Traveler by Italo Calvino, and it's a book that starts over and over 10 different
Oh.
times. It's 22 chapters. The first chapter is this, you really get into this book, and then you find out that the book that you're into isn't the book that you wanted to purchase. And so you have to go back to the bookstore. It's just a great book. I fell into it by accident. I signed up for the wrong class. The class was the novel. And I thought it was the short story back when we had to sign up with, the paper. I signed up for the wrong class, but it ended up being the right class. It's a great book.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm gonna have to look that up because that sounds fun for sure. Okay, where can you find the best? Where can you find the best school snack? Is it in the vending machine or the teacher's lounge? Because I think we all want to know what goes on in that teacher's lounge.
Yeah. It's so I have a problem with chocolate.
Okay.
There is never enough. And the best place for the best snacks is the students. They're always selling chocolate. And that they know that they can come to me if they want to sell their chocolate. I will buy all of it.
You're an easy mark for chocolate. All right.
Yeah, I am. I
All
really
right,
am.
kids.
Wow.
Remember that.
Right.
All right. And what is the funniest question a student ever asked you?
So I, I I I don't know that there's a funny question, but I had a student who is now a teacher, and I hope her students treat her the same way. I had a combination calendar, alarm clock, calculator sitting on my desk, and Stacy was in my advanced placement class, language and composition, and she would set my alarm every day. And I am someone who has uh, terrible jump scare, I guess, and would not expect the alarm to go off. And it would go off in her class, it would go off in another class later on in the day, and she would come by and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And like I never learned my lesson. I would hide it in my desk, she would find it, and yeah, it was something. But now she's a teacher, so I guess something worked.
Yeah. And finally, how do you like after a long day of teaching or talking to people in Frankfurt, how do you like to unwind at the end of the day?
So typically it's cooking dinner. I'll text my partner and ask her what she wants for dinner, and she'll say, I don't know. And I'll look in the pantry and see what we have and whip something up. And that's how I unwind. I'll, depending upon what it is, I'll put on some appropriate music. So if I'm chopping up something, it's Rage Against the Machine.
Nice.
And if it's a rough day, it's definitely Rage Against the Machine. And then that's kind of how I am.
I always like cooking as well, and especially if you have time to do it. That's the thing. Otherwise, you're just
Yeah,
like just order pizza, and that's never good.
I love to cook, and um, I'm the vegetarian in the house, so people have to eat what I make.
Love it.
It's making me hungry. It's about that time, right?
Right, right, right.
But before we let you go, where can listeners go to learn more about the Boone County Education Association? And what is the best place to stay informed about what's happening in public education?
So we do have a website. It's not the best website on the planet because it's hard to keep things up to date with
Sure.
what's going on in Frankfurt or what's going on in Boone County. So if people want to check out what's going on our Facebook page, just Google or type in Boone County Education Association into the search bar at Facebook, and you'll find out what's going on. We do try to keep that up to date. Our Vice President, Sarah Fay, keeps that up to date almost to the second. And we're, if you want to know what we're up to, that's where to go. Right now, we're trying to get maternity leave instituted. That's our big
Should
push.
be a no-brainer. Should be a no-brainer.
It's
Get it.
2026. Right, right.
Right. Kelly, I just want to thank you for all that you do for public education. I know that you've just been such a constant advocate, and we appreciate that for, I don't have any children, but for our nieces and nephews
Sure.
and all the kids that are going to be going to Kentucky public schools.
Sure. Again, it's a dream job. Have never regretted my decision.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. We really appreciate it. And thanks for listening
Good
to the
thing.
podcast too. I'm glad to know that you're listening in on
Sure.
your
Sure.
drives.
Yeah. Yeah. When it was 6 feet of snow or whatever outside, I could last for a podcast outside. It was so cold, but I would shovel a little bit, come in, have a hot cup of coffee, and then go back out and listen to another session.
That's fantastic.
So I listened to you with Lieutenant Governor Coleman while I was digging my cars out.
That's fantastic. Awesome. Well, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Sure thing. Anytime.
All right. Take care. And thank you again for listening in. And don't forget, you can join the conversation at our Facebook and Instagram pages or at blue.podcast.com. And if you like listening to our podcast, consider donating to help fund it, which you can do by clicking on the donate link at blue.podcast.com. Until next time, stay curious, keep the facts in focus, and never stop fighting for what matters. Peace out, everybody.